And today I have a special guest, Katrina Strohl, who is host of Absolutely Not podcast. Uh, so welcome in today, Katrina Strohl. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to be here. This is fancy.
I'm glad you think so. This is just basic setup, trying to make things happen. Getting people's voices out. Now your podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about? Actually, you know what? Who is Katrina Strohl? Like, let me a little bit about yourself.
So I am a Navy veteran who is now a career coach and psychological safety consultant, but I'm also the host of Absolutely Not, a live podcast series dedicated to providing examples of setting personal boundaries at work and the vocabulary needed to name harm in those spaces.
Now, what brought you to being a setting boundary coach? And that's interesting. You don't hear that a lot. That I coach people to set boundaries and psychological like safety and what brought you to that?
So in 2018, I decided to take my own life after
Mm,
internalizing toxic workplace behavior. And I
mm,
internalized all those messages and decided, well, if I'm not a good employee, I'm probably not a good person, and I don't deserve to be on this earth. I
mm,
never want anyone on this planet to feel like I did. And I felt that several times over. And it's because of the organization and their culture that they had in place.
okay. And so it's like a your personal like passion of your experiences and then how do you go about coaching other people to create boundaries?
Mhm. So, a lot of people don't have the vocabulary they need to name harm in spaces. Specifically, as a Black woman, I didn't have the vocabulary I needed to say, hey, you're gaslighting me. Hey, your bias is showing. Hey, that's discriminatory and it has nothing to do with me or the quality of work I bring to organizations. Um,
Mm,
the only tool I had in my toolbox was, do you want to fight? And
yeah.
that did not work well for me. And it led me down a lot of different paths, but I'm glad that I'm here now with the vocabulary I need to have healthy conversations and to be able to set myself apart from what's not meant for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, how that's interesting because that whole impulse of do you want to fight is like because that also can be used. It's like it's very easy to manipulate that energy. And if people read like, oh yeah, he or she can be baited like that.
Mm.
Now, how did you kind of come through that journey of having that feeling of do you want to fight and then being like okay that's not the way for my own well-being.
Mm. So shortly after I became a mom of an amazing child, I realized that that child doesn't have the vocabulary they need to have healthy conversations and
Mhm,
process their emotions. And I felt the same way. I did not have the words I needed to safely
mhm,
articulate how I felt. Instead, I would just jump into the action that I saw other people around me doing,
mhm,
and that's just not the way. It's not healthy for me. It's exhausting to have to try to fight every single person that crosses my boundaries. And it's
mhm,
just not conducive to healthy relationships.
mhm. Okay. And then like how is there a certain how do you approach 'cause since everybody is a bit different, how's your approach towards like males, females, or non-binary? Like how's that changed as you work with different groups and um like is it kind of you have like all right, this is how I approach males, this is how I approach female, it's like or is it more I'll just feel my way through it.
Mm. As I learn more about psychological safety, mental health, and boundaries, it's very much a human need. So, all
Mhm,
humans across the board want to feel psychologically safe and don't want their boundaries crossed. So, in the space of pronouns or how people present themselves, it's very easy to cross people's boundaries, especially if you're not familiar with those terms before. But
Mm,
if you have boundaries in mind, you kind of can prepare yourself to not do that with other people. Myself,
mm,
I have in my name she, they, so my pronouns are there. So I'm always making sure that I know other people's pronouns before I address them as such.
okay, okay. And then like how with the work you do, how do you I'm always interested, like everybody is multi-talented, everybody has hyphens. Like how do you make sure it's all moving in the direction that you want, where it's not disjointed, but you have it all well, laid out so it's all moving in the same direction.
Oh, that is a good question. So I have those intentional conversations with myself almost three
Mm,
times a week. Just like, hey,
mm,
I get it. We have a podcast now. I get it. We have our own business. But what is the intention behind it? Are we still on track to bring
mm,
boundaries to people? Are we still on track to ensure that people understand human behavior and healthy relationships? If it is, okay, go ahead, slap another title or label on yourself. But if not, then we don't need that title or label.
mm. That's that's very insightful because I think I was in a conversation and somebody's asking me what are my titles. As I started going through, I was like, you know what? I just want to contribute. No
Mm,
matter what title we going with today, I'm just here to contribute.
mhm,
So I'm glad. Like it's good to hear that you do that like a practice
mhm,
every day. That's good. And I think like people that are listening can kind of take that because our we're all living in that multi hyphen and slide. I'll do this, and that.
mhm,
Now, how do you determine if some things have had their season or not? Like where, say you provide this service,
mhm,
like say it was gardening tools or something, and you're like, I do five other things. Like which one of these do I cut out? And if it's gardening tools, how do you come to that conclusion?
mhm. And that, though, when my internal boundaries with myself start being crossed, like,
Mm,
hey, I don't feel up to it this week, then I have to have that conversation. Why don't you feel up to doing this project anymore? Or why aren't you excited about working with this client anymore? And we have to have those really deep conversations about, okay, we're not getting there anymore. We're not
mm,
excited about this anymore. It's time to pivot, or it's time to add or take away in one of those titles that we have listed.
mm. Okay. And has there been a time where you had to have that tough call as far as like with a client?
Not
That,
so much as a client, but recently with my titles, absolutely not has definitely exploded and kind of snowballed,
mm,
and it's pushing itself to the forefront. And I think it's so important that when that happens in your life, you take hold of it and are cognizant of it.
mm,
So many people resonated with my podcast that now I have sponsors. I'm talking on networks. I'm them bringing on the show, and if I had just ignored that and said, "It's probably a fluke," like, these people don't, it's not has nothing to do with me, then I really wouldn't be walking in the path that speaks and resonates so much with me. I care about mental health. I care about people feeling safe, and that's what this is all about.
mm, mm. Now, so you mentioned your podcast. Can you share a bit about like how it started, how long you've been doing it, where you hope to take it? And it's called Absolutely Not.
Um, so it started after I want to say after the explosion that happened, after the media exploit I don't want to use the word exploitation of George Floyd's
Mhm,
death. So many Black Americans immediately were like, you know what, we have been doing this for so long, we have been kind of sheltering ourselves, and they didn't really know, myself included, what's the first step to kind of advocate for ourselves or people that look like us in the workspace.
mhm,
I myself had those same emotions, and I needed to find an outlet where I could help people and also help myself in this journey. So setting personal boundaries always has looked super defiant when it comes from people that look like me or
mhm,
yourself.
Mm,
And I just want people to realize it's fucking not. This is a normal thing. I deserve to have
mm,
mental health intact, and I deserve to be who I want to be in any space.
mm, mm. Now, with so what is absolutely not like? How did you get the name of that?
So my partner, anytime I would ask them to do anything, they would say absolutely not. And so I made a sign that I had on my desk. I worked
Uh,
in a warehouse where I had to like hire people and make them do
mm,
forklift exams. And I had that sign on my desk because my manager would come to my desk and always be like, "Hey, can you work till like 6?" And I would always say,
mm.
"Sure, that's fine." When I really wanted to say, "No, get out of my fucking face. Why
Yeah.
would you ask me that?" So I made a sign and it said absolutely not. And I would always look at it and just say, "No, I can't do that today.
Oh
No."
wow.
Hmm.
So that became like kind of your guide when somebody pressures you, asks you something, catch you off guard to do something, and you just reference that.
Hmm. It was like
Nice.
North Star, and it really held me accountable because it was just staring at me every single day.
Hmm. Now, is that kind of how you go about your coaching? Like, do you give people kind of those kind of visual cues?
So in my coaching sessions, I go over very specific and strategic expectations that my clients have in their next role. What do you want to see the culture in your next organization look like? What does direct leadership look like to you? What does a healthy relationship look like to you? Once we have those things written down, then if throughout the process they waver from it, I will hold them accountable to the expectations we talked about prior.
Mhm.
Because what are you doing? Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And I think that's super important. Is like because it sounds like you also have them come with what do you want, and then I'm going to hold you to what you said. Like,
Yeah.
do you ever feel like the how does it feel like being? It sounds like at times you have to be the stern parent to like somebody that's your peer. Do you ever find that that challenging, especially if somebody it's somebody that you would probably look up to and they're signed up for your services?
Mm. I used to find it challenging. I don't anymore, and it
Mm,
all goes back to intent. My
mm,
intent is for you to never move into another organization that takes you for granted, that abuses you, that discriminates against you, and does not see your worth. And we can only do that if I'm pushing you to hold them accountable in the beginning of the relationship.
mm, mm. Okay. Um, where were we? So for now, is there certain like books you read that kind of inspired or that you still learn from that feed your work?
Yeah. So there's a book out that's called You Got Me Fucked Up, and it's by Tamarisk Locke.
Uh-huh.
She's a Black author who used to be a mental health practitioner.
Oh, wow.
It is really clear cut on what type of boundaries you should be setting in your personal life and professional life. If
Mhm.
anybody's out there listening, you got me fucked up. So
Mm.
yeah, definitely look
Okay.
into it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And then does that help with because a lot of times if you're in those situations, you are one of the most disturbing parts of it is it's flipped on you that
Mm,
you're the it's you, but he's like, this is not how I is that how you coach is using material like that as well?
And that goes back to that vocabulary. Knowing what gaslighting is and being able to define it in the moment helps you
Mm-hmm.
to control your own emotions and your actions following those emotions. So instead
Mm-hmm.
of, do you want to fight? When somebody gaslights me, I can just, okay, you're gaslighting me. I know that
Mm-hmm.
you're not able to have a normal, healthy conversation, and we'll have
Mm-hmm.
to table this conversation until you are ready.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I coach a lot of people into doing because I'm not going to continue to have a conversation with somebody who's unable to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then do you take that work onto like the social media and those kind of platforms as well?
So I'm really big on LinkedIn. I post a lot about LinkedIn about how my boundaries have been crossed, or
Mm-hmm.
how I'm learning more and more about how to set boundaries. So if anybody's listening out there, follow me on LinkedIn, and I just kind of ramble about boundaries a lot.
Okay, because I know that's the most of the toxic environments now because we've all moved working more at home. So
Mm,
now that the toxic workplace environment a lot is now online.
mm.
Now, do you have is that aspect part of your coaching at this time?
So I specialize in toxic workplaces and the
Mm,
ability to kind of figure out if they're able to create psychological safety in those workplaces. For me, it doesn't matter if it's virtual or not because your behavior still comes through whether regardless if it's on a screen or not. So I can
mm,
coach people on how to do that, and organizations as well as how to create that psychologically safe environment for their employees to be able to speak up when they're
mm,
abused or discriminated against.
mm.
So I think the techniques are the same.
Okay, and that's a great point because before we were talking about um, you coaching people to better handle those situations. So you also coach how to create healthy workplace environments that facilitate for individuals as they work in these environments as well.
Because the goal is for all of us humans on this planet to respect everybody's boundaries and be able to be a safe space for anybody who's around them. So
Mm-hmm.
I also consult organizations on how to build that safe space and how to communicate effectively while not crossing their employees' boundaries and creating hostile environments. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those are other services that I provide.
Nice, nice. And then what is like with your own routine? Like how do you manage and make sure you're sticking with your practices as far as mental health?
Hmm. Therapy. So I
Mm,
have multiple mental health conditions, and
mm,
they need maintaining like other any other illness or ailment or disease. I need to seek professional help to maintain it. So I go
mm,
to therapy bi-weekly, but I also meditate, and I
mm,
have those introverted sessions with myself where I'm writing down exactly how I felt throughout the day and why we felt that way. It's so important to have control of your emotions, or they're going to control you.
mm, mm. Nice, nice. And I I remember when I hear that, like I think of my friend who has a repaired ACL. So it's
Mhm.
like so when he goes running, like he has to do extra stretching and
Mhm.
extra like to warm that up and to make sure that leg is ready to run. So like when you said that, I think that's the same thing with mental health. If you've had struggles in the past, it's like your brain is healthy now. It's still you have to do extra warm up or to just get that what they call it primed to get it primed.
Mhm.
So I like that you say that because it is, and that goes for every human being. Like figuring
Mhm.
out how to prime yourself to have a good healthy day.
Mhm.
Um, that's nice. And then, so how does is there has your work affected your partner, your friends, your family?
Absolutely. It
Mm,
definitely affects my relationships, but so
mm,
does my mental health conditions. So does me being a Black woman. Everything about me affects the people around us, which is why it's
mm,
so important to know who we are and all of the compartments of ourselves because it affects
mm,
the people around us. So
mm,
I have PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder.
mm,
I am easily triggered, and I know that about myself. If for some reason I wasn't able to control my emotions, um, it would affect the people around me.
mhm, mm,
When I decided, or when I made that decision to take my own life, that decision affected the people around me.
Mm,
So I maintain these conditions. I maintain my mental health. I ensure that I have these boundaries in place because I know it affects everyone around me, but myself most importantly.
mhm, mhm. Now, do you one of the things I noticed when uh so a little backstory. It took me like 3 years to convince my mom of what was going on with me.
Mm,
So, but the unintended byproduct of that was the overcorrection.
mm,
So I think there's a so I don't know if you've experienced that, but how do you, if you have, how do you express to your loved ones that the overcorrection is also not as necessary in a way? It's just more of knowing or learn communication and how to word things. But there is, have you dealt, first off, have you dealt with that overcorrection?
I think in new relationships, maybe new networking that I find on LinkedIn, when I'm vocal about my mental health conditions, then they will kind of try to like pivot away from the conversation, or they'll try to, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way, or
Mm-hmm.
just overcorrecting, overcompensating for something that wasn't even there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess in that, like, yes, I have experienced that.
And did you like have you noticed like the one of the cool things I've noticed over the last over the years since I've had those conversations is the going back to human,
Mm,
like rather than just, because what you don't want to be is a permanent patient. You're
mm,
not that. At the end of the day, you're human, and like everybody else, you have things that you struggle with, or you have overcome, or it's like it's about doing the work and
mm,
and contributing.
mhm.
So with that, like, how have you noticed the adjustments over time as people have been around you and work with you?
I think that's the great thing about my knowledge and my articulation of boundaries is I'm
Mm,
bringing it down to a very simple playing field. These are
mm,
my boundaries because I have mental health conditions, but even if you didn't have mental health conditions, you can set boundaries. You can say, no,
mm,
I don't want my camera on, or no, I don't want to work past 5 o'clock. You don't even have to tell them you have mental health conditions.
mhm,
That's
mm,
just my why. So I
mhm,
think the people around me, because I talk about boundaries so much and it has a lot of intersection with mental health, they've
mhm,
just become so used to it, just like, oh, she's just setting a boundary. It could be because she's a human, or it could be because of her mental health conditions. Who fucking
mhm.
knows? But she is a human who is setting boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And now with everything that has unfolded, how has that influenced your life? Like, has that made you um, more passionate about uh, Black Lives Matter, more passionate, or like some people I've talked to, they've been doing the work and like nothing really, because they're already so entrenched in trying to make change for people of color, indigenous, like their work was already going. So when George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, Elijah McClain, like when all that was happening and still happening, they just kept right on going. So
Mm.
like, do you feel like do you feel like you've made a more of a shift, or you feel like you're continuing what you've already been doing?
I think before the tragic death of all of those people you just mentioned, oh,
Mhm,
murder, excuse me.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
I think before that, I was just a Black woman trying to live and do my job. And I would I would go up to my HR director, because I worked in HR, and would say, "Hey, I had this conversation about my hair. Could you talk to them about this?" And it would immediately be dismissed.
mhm,
I think after everything that occurred, I understood how short life is. Even though I already had my own experiences, I understood I don't have time. Like, I do not have time to be in this corporate workplace and play y'all's little game and do all this stuff. And I definitely would attribute that to all of those murders.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to add in Breonna Taylor and the so many that don't get named, including the LGBTQ community. So just a lot of people that don't get named. So yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I do think that made us all realize that we're how interconnected we all are. And that was, if anything comes out of last year, besides politicians kneeling with a kente cloth.
Ugh.
But that's that interconnectedness. That is something that we still can and are still learning how that works and how it is to be a global citizen. Which brings me to my next question: like, how have you responded as far as like more aware of our interconnection as a global citizen?
I do not understand that question.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 and that's completely fine. Like, so I would say just more so of, um, like, so I've been watching the president of Ghana, right, and he says that he will not just keep the contract of Sweden and exporting raw materials of cocoa to Sweden so they can manufacture it and instead he's going to make a decision that where they manufacture and make chocolates and keep it in the house,
Mm,
because that way they build more jobs and security for the people of Ghana.
mm,
And I think that's part of our global awakening, where it's like we've taken contracts or we've normalized the way things have been set up. So
wow.
that's what I mean by global citizen and global interconnectedness, is that we are all realizing these unhealthy environments or contracts, um, that we are just conditioned to just take. So that's what I mean. Yeah.
Awesome. And I
Yeah.
think in my own right, I have also
Mm,
become so I recently partnered with Liberated Love Notes and Cup
mm,
of Tea, which are both Black owned businesses, one of which is in Canada, Ontario, Canada, and the
mm,
other, I actually don't know where she's located, but they're both Black owned and pro Black and pro disabled and pro diversity and inclusion and equity. And I
mm,
made those intentional decisions because I see that I don't want my power or my status or anything going outside of what I'm trying to build here, which is
mm,
all voices that look similar to myself being able to
mm,
speak up and build power on themselves. So I guess
mm.
that's what I'm doing in my small right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's part of, I guess, like when I say, because we're so impactful for each other, like to see your work and then like you see my work, like, and I had a conversation yesterday with a friend. He's like, you're a public figure, and I was like, well, what does that mean for change though?
Hmm.
Like that's all I'm about. So I don't, if it's not about change, then it doesn't really help. I don't mean, I'm not going to poo-poo it, but it is a sense of the goal is to create permanent change, like
Mm.
positive permanent change. Now, how does that, with everything you're doing, is there a vision? Like, are you kind of like, because it's a pandemic, it's hard, and there's a lot of we make plan. My one of my phrases I've loved from the day I heard it is man makes plans and God laughs. Is like, because I think there's a certain level of truth to that where you still have to make plans, but at the end of the day, you only have so much control,
Mhm.
um, and and but still doing the work. Uh,
Mhm.
I lost my question. I apologize. I was like, wait a minute. What's the question though? Self?
It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. But oh, there it is. So is there a vision for your work in the what you hope to accomplish? And I know for some people it can be so abstract, or some people it can be very simple. Um,
I guess
is
I guess it's both abstract and simple. I just
mm,
want every single employee that works for another person to know they have the right to say no. You
mm,
don't have to be treated that way. You don't have to endure abuse. You don't have to endure anything you don't want to endure just for a measly ass paycheck. And I say
mm,
that in the most disrespectful way. Um, build a network, build a community, build
mm.
around people who have the same values as you, and say absolutely not to anything else that doesn't align.
That's powerful. And I love that because that whole that respect is a trap as well. So I gotta stay respectful. I got, it's like I'm gonna say yeah to adding that extra shift because I want to
Mhm.
make sure I'm respectful and come off as nice and da 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 da. So I like that is to be disrespectful at times because your time is being disrespected.
Mhm.
So that makes sense. Now, how have you? I love the way you break stuff down because that's kind of where even I've talked to some mental health people that have been in the field for like decades, and they said one of the things that they're being more black centered is also letting go of the strict terminology
Mhm.
that they've been told and they've been taught that makes them professional. Now, have you felt that shift? Because I can hear where it's like, "Yo, I'm gonna be unprofessional and tell you what." So, have you? Is that a very conscious? Um, I'm sure it is, but what's been the evolution of that? How you've gone from I gotta be professional, um, and to I'm gonna be professional in the way that's authentic to me.
And I know I keep saying this, but it definitely goes back to intent. When
Mhm,
I used to code switch, the intent was to make sure that I don't look like a threat, or that to
mhm,
make the other person believe that I know what I know that I'm saying I know. I know what the
mhm,
fuck I know. I don't have to do that so that you believe I know what I know. Um,
uh-huh,
and I've become aware of that. I know what I know, and if you don't believe that, then I'm sorry that you don't believe that. I
mhm.
am, however, going to continue on with my mission and build my network nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's liberating.
Right?
That's liberating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Audre Lorde talked about that, where it's like you can spend so much energy
Mm,
explaining, and because it's like you're literally giving that away, so they can all like there's a sense of you can explain, explain, explain. There's always another thing to explain,
mm,
another thing to justify, another thing.
mhm,
And I think that's a powerful lesson of stop explaining
mhm.
and just do what you set out to do. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That
And I recently learned that through her name is Maida Sora, and she told me one of the principles of white supremacy is perfectionism, and that really
mm,
ties into that, like having to explain and make sure you talk a certain way and that it's presented in a certain like. No, if your intent is to do good to man and to ensure that people are safe around you, it doesn't
mm,
matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter how it's packaged. Just do what you set out to do.
mhm, mhm. And I think we are also conditioned. It's like it's even hearing you say that, it's like we logically know it,
Mhm,
but to drop it down to the heart and
mhm,
and have that change from the heart is always that process, right? And that's a because I know it's even myself is that perfectionism, and everybody sees it. It's like trying to be perfect, trying to be trying to be perfect, be perfect.
mhm,
Um, so that is, and I think we've been taught to see uh, what spirituality is, what is professionalism, what is a parent. Like we've been told what those roles should look like, to the point when we don't allow ourselves to just be those, be spiritual, be a parent, be professional in the way that we authentic to our makeup. Um, and that's what now are you, would you say you're more philosophical, spiritual, or kind of interconnected as well? Or
I don't think I've ever been asked that question, and I have
mm,
not defined that yet for myself. And
mm,
that's the number one word that kept popping up when you were talking is defining.
mm,
Defining those roles for yourself and what they look like.
mm,
I grew up in foster homes, so my definition of what parenting looks like, I have to create that shit myself. I have to go
mhm.
out and do research and learn about it myself. My
Yeah.
definition of what professional looks like, I'm defining that for myself and what I
Mhm.
want those relationships to look like. So,
Mm.
yeah, I have not defined that for myself yet, but you know what? That's another task on the docket, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because it's like you have, because if our culture comes out of white supremacy, then that has an effect on how we see ourselves and we see the world.
Mm,
So that's after last year is like I've been thrown into that. I got to define everything myself
mm,
in spite of even my culture. Is like, how do I define myself
mm.
and who I am? Now, have you found that at all challenging as far as your your own like within Black culture? Have you found that challenge of defining yourself?
Extremely challenging.
Mm,
I'm also Samoan, so I'm half black, half Samoan. So
mm,
even in that space, I mean, I'm sure you've heard like before some black people will say, okay, well, you're not black enough, you can't talk about black culture.
mm,
Or they'll say, okay, well, you're not black at all. I tell you what, every single space I've been in, I've been black.
mm,
So
mm.
I had to define that for myself. I am black
Yeah.
enough, I am worthy enough, I have enough research and intelligence and resources to talk about the topics I choose to speak about.
Hmm. Mm. Nice, nice. And then I got about one more question.
Okay.
Now, what's your you do so much. So what is your how do you structure your days like to accomplish everything you accomplish? How do you approach your day?
So I was medically retired from the Navy for my
Mm,
mental health conditions. When I first got out of the military, I said, okay, that doesn't mean shit. I'm still going to go get a full time job. I'm still going to do all the things. And I was lying to myself.
mm,
I have very recently realized how much I had been lying to myself. I am disabled and I cannot work a full time job. I can't give 60 hours a week to
mhm,
a higher position. I just cannot do that.
mm,
So my days look structured around that. I only work part time. I only give an hour a week to outside um, projects. They're structured around the needs that I have and have not been reflecting on for a really long time. I'm also a mother, a partner, and all of the above. So I
mhm,
always talk to my clients about, hey, how many hats are you wearing today?
mm,
Sometimes they have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hats on, and you don't even
mhm,
realize it.
mm. Okay. All right. And then with with your projects, the where would you like people to reach out to you? Um, as I'm looking at the .com, hey, where would you like people to contact you? Huh? I don't know. So what's the process as far as if people wanted to work with you?
I definitely can be contacted through my website. I have a contact form there, but I'm always accessible, not always boundaries, but I'm easily accessible through LinkedIn. You can message me and I'll probably get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, which I can attest to. Thank you for being flexible and communicative. So I appreciate that. Now, last question. Uh, do you know how to two-step?
I do
Yes,
actually. Is that
yes.
part of it? I have to.
Yeah, it's the two-step part. This is man, but well, thank you so much. This is we'll definitely continue this conversation. Really enjoy. This is part one. So for the Fight the Funk crew, I will be on Katrina Strohl's podcast. Absolutely not next week. So so this is just part one. So check out part two. I'm excited to continue this conversation. You do amazing work, and I'm happy to have this conversation with you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation next week. Uh, and
Thanks.
yeah, have a great day. All right, so